Welcome to Vibe Sense. It's funny how a sport can be this huge point of national pride, but also a flashpoint for conflict. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating situation. Two rival nations, right on the edge of war, who were somehow scheduled to face off on a cricket pitch. It raises a pretty big question. How on earth, just weeks after a major military strike, did India and Pakistan end up playing a high-stakes cricket match? That's the mystery we're unpacking today, and it all kicks off with one specific military operation. So, to really get why this was so controversial, we have to rewind a little and look at the context. It all started with a flashpoint that had a very specific name. And that name was Operation Sindoor. What happened was, in early May 2025, there was this awful terror attack in Pahalgam. India's response was this operation, a precise military strike. Now, the official report said it was aimed right at terror infrastructure and took out over 100 militants. This was a huge deal, and the fallout was immediate. Things escalated so fast. You had the terror attack, which led straight to Operation Sindoor. Then, within days, skirmishes were breaking out on the border and diplomatic ties were cut. But then, and this is super important for the story, a ceasefire was reached on May 10th. Remember that date. It created this small window of calm. But in the public's eyes, the damage was already done. So you can imagine, with emotions running this high, the idea of just playing a cricket match felt wrong to a lot of people. And a huge wave of public opposition started to build, led by some very big names. First up was the former Indian cricket captain, Azharuddin. He didn't mince words. He basically said, we shouldn't be playing this match, and even called for a total suspension of cricket ties. But notice that last part. The government will decide. He knew even then that the final call wasn't up to him. And it wasn't just former legends. An active cricketer at the time, Manoj Tiwary, said pretty much the same thing. He felt that playing was against the national sentiment, the general feeling in the country after Operation Sindoor. He was really plugged into that public mood. Then, of course, the politicians weighed in. Azharuddin Owaisi, a member of parliament, pointed out what he saw as a massive contradiction. If you've already cut trade and diplomatic ties, why is cricket the exception? He even quoted the prime minister, using that powerful line, blood and water cannot float together. So you've got cricketers, politicians, and the public all saying this is a mad idea. You'd think the match would be canceled, for sure. And yet, it went on. Which brings us to the big question, why? What on earth was strong enough to push past all that opposition? Well, the answer isn't so simple. It turns out to be this messy mix of international logistics, some pretty delicate diplomacy, and just plain old contractual obligations. Let's break down exactly how this game managed to happen. Okay, so the single biggest reason this match went ahead comes down to one really important distinction. See, direct matches just between India and Pakistan, those are called bilateral series. They had already been on hold for years because of politics. But this game was different. It was part of the Asia Cup 2025, a multilateral tournament with a bunch of different countries. And those kinds of events play by a whole different rulebook. So you had a few key things that all lined up. First, it was an international tournament, not a one-on-one series. Second, it was at a neutral venue in the UAE, which took a lot of the pressure off. Third, just like Azharuddin said, the final call wasn't up to the public. It was up to the government and the BCCI. They had to weigh national feeling against their international commitments. And finally, that fragile ceasefire on May 10th gave them just enough political breathing room to let the game happen. So, what you end up with is this classic showdown, right? On one side, you have the very real, very powerful emotions of a country, and on the other, you have the complicated, often invisible machinery of international sports. And when you lay it all out like this, you can really see the two sides clashing. You had the intense feelings stirred up by Operation Sindoor and the loud public opposition. But pushing back against that was the quiet logistics of it all. It was a multilateral tournament, it was in a neutral country, and the final decision makers had bigger things to think about. That ceasefire on May 10th was the final piece that tipped the scales. In the end, obligation just won out over sentiment. This whole situation really leaves you with a big, lingering question that's about more than just cricket. Is sport actually a bridge for peace? A tool that can fix things when politicians can't? Or is it sometimes just a huge distraction, a global show that lets us all look away from the real, deeper problems?
I guess the answer probably changes with every single match.
Thanks for watching VibeSense.